Alright, so I have a video I want to make today about Maxime Bernier. For those who do not know, he was a member of the Conservative Party who recently left to form his own party, and that party is the People's Party of Canada, the PPC. It's just recently been formed. You can actually join for free if you are a Canadian citizen. They will send you a membership card signed by Maxime himself, so go ahead and do that if you're interested. I would recommend you look at their platform first, which is actually what we're going to be doing in this video. Basically, I've heard some stuff about him, but haven't actually looked into what his policies would be, what he voted for, and they've uploaded a platform that is basically just things he's been in favor of in the past. The party's, like I said, the party's only been recently formed, so they haven't had enough time to make an official platform yet, but they basically got it down. What I've heard of him is he's basically a libertarian who is willing to have a real discussion about immigration, which I think would be about the best thing that we could have right now. So I'm clearly excited about the prospect of having a libertarian government that's willing to talk about immigration. You have to be willing to discuss the biggest issue of the day. And at the same time, you need to want to shrink the government if you want me to vote for you. As of right now, I probably would not vote for the Conservatives. I don't know. Andrew Scheer has just been so underwhelming for me. So, I think if it came down to it, I probably would vote for them just to not be liberal. But where I live, the province is going to be blue. There's no doubt. Alberta's blue. I'm in Edmonton, so that is the reddest city. But where I live is much more conservative. I don't live in downtown or anything like that. So, with that out of the way, let's actually look at the platform itself. There we go. So, I'm basically just going to read this and commentate on it and give my thoughts. The People's Party of Canada platform is still being finalized, like I said. Until it is, please check the policies posted by its leader, Maxime Bernier, when he was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party in 2016-2017. Yeah, I forgot to mention, he was one of the, other candidates than Andrew Scheer. I don't even know who the other ones were. It wasn't something that I was really paying attention to. So basically, the PPC's platform will be based on the same policies. So you've got these points here. Unleashing Canada's potential, decentralizing and shrinking the government, making every Canadian richer, standing up for rural Canadians. Canada's immigration policy must aim to fulfill our economic needs. A foreign policy focused on the security and prosperity of Canadians, and a fair gun policy for Canada. These all sound good, so let's just go into them. This is going to be unleashing Canada's potential, I think is what it is, yeah. Equalization. So equalization is basically we sort all the provinces based on average income, and then the provinces with the highest average income, like Alberta, then have money transferred from them to the provinces with the lowest average income. So even though Alberta is currently in a recession, we are still transferring, I don't know how much it is, a couple $1 billion a year to other provinces. So, yeah, it's a rather odd system if you ask me, but, well, leftists do what leftists do, I guess. Let's look at the rest here. Policy. Our system has become a welfare trap. Yeah. Pushing all provinces and rewarding big government. I'll fix it. Add your name if you're with me. I think by fix it, he just means we're going to get rid of it, which is, yeah, it's kind of silly. There are better ways to help other provinces. Scrap the carbon tax. Canadians all support cleaner air and water. This is basically true. Canada has some of the cleanest air in the world. Part of that is because there's not very many people here. Part of that is because we have so many trees. But yeah, people value a clean air. I mean, it's one of the things I love most about living here. I go out other places that don't have very nice air, and I'm like, oh, dude, coughing up. It's terrible. So yeah, I'm very happy keeping our air and water clean. I would pay to do so. But a carbon tax won't do anything to protect our environment. This is true. Studies have shown that for every $100 spent on environmental initiatives, you get about $3 of value. So by taxing Canadians for the carbon they use, it's not even that it's not that ratio, but that's like it's something around there. Maybe we get $5 of value. Ooh. All it will do is increase costs on businesses and kill jobs. Truth. Increasing the price of fuel and the price of electricity will put the price up of everything up. Yeah, well, the boss has to drive his car to get to work. He has to pay to power his store. Of course. Of course, if energy costs more, everything's going to cost more. It costs money to ship things across the country. So if the cost of shipment goes up, of course the cost of the end product will go up. Businesses will be forced to choose between keeping employees on payroll or paying the hydro bill. This is unacceptable. This tax needs to be scrapped. It's the right plan. I suppose what he should say is it's not the right plan, but I understand what you're saying. That scrapping it is the right plan. And yeah, it's just that will never work. End all barriers to trade between provinces. Nolly. Interprovincial trade barriers cost Canada's economy as much as $130 billion every year. I don't know where they got this from, so I don't know how accurate that is. But it costs money. It costs a lot of money. I'm guessing, I don't know, it might be $130 billion, it might be $200 billion, it might be $50 billion. Those are all too much. So, it is unfair for nurses, dentists, or accountants to have problems finding work in another province because they need to jump through hoops to have their skills recognized. Yeah, I'm not really aware of this issue, but if there's differences between the provinces, as if a nurse trained in Ontario can't work in Alberta, that seems rather silly to me. It's unfair to stop businesses from being able to grow and expand into other provincial markets. It is unfair that consumers are often limited to buying products or services from their own province. We need to stop provinces from putting up these unconstitutional trade barriers. It's the right plan. I think he's just going to end all of these with it's the right plan. So I guess that's why he's saying that. It's pretty dumb. And it is actually unconstitutional. There are not supposed to be any trade barriers between provinces. That is in the Constitution. Permanently expand the accelerated capital cost allowance to all sectors. The accelerated capital cost allowance has allowed certain businesses to write off investments against taxable income more rapidly and has been a great success story. Making this program permanent and applying it to all sectors will put money in the pockets of every single business owner. It will allow net growth and new investment. It will increase prosperity. It's the right plan. I think I'm going to be saying that a lot. This seems like a tax credit for investment, which, generally that's fine. I would prefer the government just not take that money. I think that would be better. That's a better solution, but a tax credit for investment is better than not having one if you want to increase investment. I don't think it is the right plan long term, but, as a short-term measure, sure, that seems reasonable. Policy. Aggressively pursue free trade deals. Yeah, I'm liking that. Conservatives believe in the freedom of the marketplace as the basis of human prosperity. That is true. We have always had a strong record on trade. From the North American Free Trade Agreement to the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with Europe to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But there is more to do. We need to finish negotiations with India. Yeah, that's a big deal. Big market. We need to start negotiations with China. Other huge market. A Canada-China Free Trade Agreement would expand Canadian exports by nearly $8 billion annually. It would increase Canadian household income by nearly $6 billion annually, and it would create 25,000 well-paying Canadian jobs. It's the right plan. I don't know why that's making me laugh now, but it seems to get me. Free trade is really important to me. I think this is it should be a human right, to be honest. I mean, if you own yourself and you own your labor and you own the effects of your decisions, why does anyone have any right to say you can't trade with someone? That's just downright silly. So, yep. Seems to be the right plan to me. Free trade with China and India. All in favor of that. Eliminate all corporate welfare. That's what I like to hear. There's a simple way for the federal government to show fairness to all regions of the country, to all industries, and to taxpayers. It is to completely stop subsidizing businesses and to reduce their taxation. This is not only fair, but it is economically efficient. It respects that the free market can make decisions far better than Ottawa bureaucrats. Man, if this guy follows through and he really believes this stuff, I'm liking where this is going. Seems like a very good libertarian candidate. setting myself up to be disappointed, I'm sure. And it will stop the consistent practice of throwing good taxpayer dollars after bad into failing and mismanaged companies. Ending the practice of picking winners and losers is the right plan. Agreed. Yeah, corporate welfare is among the silliest things that happens. One of Harper's conservative government's major achievements was to reduce the corporate income tax from 22%, wow, I didn't know it was that high, to 15% in 2012. But we can still do better. Canada's combined corporate income tax rate is 15th highest in the OECD. Wow. Bringing it down to 10% will increase the after-tax return on investment. That's true. And thus encouraging businesses to invest more. This will create jobs and unleash Canada's productive forces. That is the right plan. Personally, I feel like his long-term goal is to have it be zero, and I think that's correct. Basically, the corporation income is not so relevant, right? If say Apple, I guess, if Apple didn't have to pay any taxes, what would Apple do with this extra income? Well, sure, some of it would be paid out to their investors, but that would encourage more people to invest. But also, they would just add more jobs. They can afford more people to work for them. They'll expand their business. They'll hire more people, and they'll provide more products at a better price for consumers. Great. You can say, okay, well, individual tax rate, that's where we should be getting our money. Well, okay, sure. If we're going to get money, it should probably be from there. But even then, that should be low as well. So I like that part. That was very libertarian of him. We have decentralizing and shrinking the government. I have a feeling I'm going to like this part too. And interprovincial trade barriers. I think we already saw this, but this is a lot more information on it. Interprovincial trade barriers cost Canada's economy as much as $130 billion. That's the same numbers before, so consistency is good. Again, I don't know if that number is legit or not. Lost economic opportunities each and every year. It's some though. It's definitely not zero. It is completely foolish to allow this type of barriers to exist. Okay. I think I'll let them know about their typo. It is doubly foolish when you look at our Constitution and see that trade barriers like these are prohibited. It is ridiculous to prevent the growth of business because they are not allowed to gain access to other provincial markets, and it is ridiculous to stop workers from traveling between provinces because their skills are not recognized. It depends. I'm fine with each province deciding what the prerequisites for a job are. Say healthcare, we need this for nurses, and if nurses from Newfoundland don't have that, well, okay, fair enough. They can take some extra course to learn the thing. If it's just like, well, no, you have to do the entire degree over again, that is just outrageous. But, a test to prove that you know what you're doing, or a short course or something like that seems reasonable. Again, I'm not I don't know a lot about what he's talking about, but if there is something like that where people's skills are just not transferable between provinces, that seems absurd to me, and yes, definitely something that should be discouraged at least. We should use Article 121 of our Constitution, which states that interprovincial trade is a federal jurisdiction, to 1. Establish an economic charter of rights, and 2. Create an economic freedom commission with the power to take provinces to court when their regulations infringe upon your freedom. A Charter of Economic Rights will establish the case for Ottawa's intervention to protect the Constitution and allow for free trade between provinces, and an Economic Freedom Commission will find and stop breaches of the right to free trade between provinces. This is the right plan. Respect the rights of firearms owners. So here he's making a libertarian, a private property, basically, argument for a pro-gun, private property-based argument. There we go. Hunting and sport shooting are important parts of Canadian heritage. I agree. These things are fun. For too long, gun owners have been disrespected by the government. Yeah, there's been plenty of times where the federal government specifically has tried to either force licenses, which they've basically done now. You can't buy ammunition without a license, and register guns specifically. The licenses are like, I'm not so, that seems reasonable to me, but to have to register each individual gun, that is, A, not doable. I mean, the argument before was, how are you going to implement this? I know people who have guns, and there's no way that the government knows that they have guns, so they could just not tell them if they didn't want to. So, And then what are you going to do? Like, say the firearm is used in a crime. Well, it's an unregistered gun. End of story. There's no useful thing there. So unless you can get all of them, there's no real point. And it's very expensive as well. They shouldn't have to worry about having their property reclassified and confiscated. So this is his argument here is, well, they already own this, and it would be very unjust for them to be taken. Property rights should be respected. I don't know how good of an argument for no or pro-gun argument property rights are. I think if, I don't know, say people own something that they didn't realize was dangerous and it's actually a bomb. Your phone, I don't know. Let's say Apple is as evil as some people think they are, and they put a bomb in everyone's phone. Well, confiscating everyone's bomb phone might be okay. I don't know. But again, that's not the case with guns, so they probably already knew what they were buying when they bought it, so I'm not sure. It's kind of not something I've thought about too much. The Firearms Act should be reviewed by experts and replaced with effective legislation that protects property rights and cracks down on dangerous criminals. Sure, I don't know. No real opinion. Stop the federal carbon tax. See the carbon tax thing before. It doesn't work, and it's just a way for the government to get money, basically. Stop bribing groups with ineffective tax credits. Every year it costs Canadians billions of dollars to comply with the tax code. That's because each budget has more and more boutique tax credits. Government after government have spent billions of dollars trying to bribe micro-targeted groups of Canadians with their own money. It's wrong. A Fraser Institute study found that there are approximately $20 billion worth of boutique tax credits that could be cut. Any tax credit that does not serve a concrete public policy purpose should immediately be scrapped. Yeah, I mean, random tax credits don't really make sense without good reason. If he's talking about stuff like, I went off and I'm a businessman or a corporation CEO, and I went off and basically bought some politician for a friendly tax credit in their code. Yeah, okay, fair enough. If the corporate income tax is going to be coming down anyway, then I don't see why they should have that. And well, it's not really just that they would have a tax that or a tax credit that only applies to them anyway. That would just be a government subsidy. So there you go. And earlier on, we established that part of this platform is to end government subsidies. End corporate welfare. We already talked about that. Agreed. Balance the budget within 2 years of taking power. Okay. Debt and deficits are nothing more than deferred taxes on our children and grandchildren. That statement, that line alone, is a good thing to see from a potential politician. It means he's being honest. Justin Trudeau would not tell you this. Justin Trudeau would say, oh, well, we're going to go into debt now, but it's going to be worth it. You see, because of the extra growth that our economy is going to have, which is fake growth, by the way. And because of this extra growth, in the long run, it's going to be worth going into debt. Because we'll have more money then than we would have to pay it off. This is bullshit. Spending government money to increase consumption just ups the GDP. It just makes it look good. Consumption doesn't really matter that much. The important thing in growing your economy is investment. And doing this, going into debt, actually reduces investment. So, not so good. No, not so nice. He's just completely right. Deferred taxes on our children and grandchildren. It is deferred saving in the future. At some point, the bill will come due for the reckless spending from the Trudeau Liberal government. That is why it is important to present a balanced budget within 2 years of taking office, commit to only running a balanced budget, and legislate a debt repayment schedule. This is the right plan. Get Ottawa out of healthcare and transfer tax points to the provinces. Healthcare is an area of provincial jurisdiction. Yes, it is not supposed to be touched by the federal government in Canada. But due to years of federal interference, provinces have become reliant on transfer payments to pay their doctors and run their hospitals. Man, I don't know who wrote this, but they're grabbing me some work. This leads to bickering between Ottawa and the provinces over who is responsible for our abysmal healthcare system. Transferring tax credits to provinces and ending Ottawa's interference will create accountability. Breaking the taboo around private sector involvement in healthcare will bring innovation. That is the right plan. I definitely would like to break the taboo around private sector involvement. People think Canada has a good healthcare system, but We really don't. We have among the highest wait times because of the rationing. We're constantly going into debt further to pay for it. It's incredibly expensive to Canadian taxpayers, and when you think about it, we're paying all this money, which we would pay anyway, right? We're giving our tax money to the government so they can pay healthcare when we could have just taken that money and paid for our own healthcare. And it's being spent inefficiently and very poorly, and we're going further into debt to deal with it as well. If individuals were accountable for their own health care, we could have a system that was much cheaper and much better. But we don't. That's not going to happen with the government continuing to be involved in healthcare like it is right now. So I agree, we definitely need to at least start weaning people off of government-paid healthcare. I'm not saying just break it all overnight. That's, that would leave people without their healthcare and in a bad situation. But if in 30 years we could not have it, that would be much better than what we have right now. Or whatever the time is, I don't know how long that would take. Respect the Constitution. Our Constitution is a great document. It outlines the power of the federal government, the provinces, and the inherent freedoms that Canadians enjoy. But for too long, successive governments have treated the Constitution as a series of suggestions rather than fundamental law of the land. Yeah. Same with in America. I mean, Obama basically just pissed on it. So we see a lot of governments lately have been disrespecting their constitutions. Federal governments have dabbled in healthcare and education. Provincial governments have constructed barriers to the free flow of goods and services between provinces. And all levels of government have needlessly overreached into the lives of Canadians. This must stop. Politicians must respect the Constitution. This is the right plan. So I again, some of these were repoints, but I definitely, decentralizing and shrinking the government is something I'm in favor of. Making every Canadian richer. I'm guessing this is mostly about taxation, but we'll see. Kick the CRTC out of the telecom industry and allow for more competition. Please! Canadians pay some of the highest prices for phone and internet, and we have not even that good a service. It's absurd. It's actually insane. Like, a first world country with second world internet is how it's described. It's terrible, and the CRTC is a huge part of this. Any big regulatory body that is affecting telephone and internet is basically going to be a part of this, and the CRTC is, of course, no exception. For too long, the CRTC has been stifling competition and innovation in the telecommunications sector. Canada has a strong and mature telecommunications sector, and it doesn't need to be coddled by government bureaucracy making fake competition. It is unacceptable. The CRTC needs to get out of the telecom industry, and foreign competition needs to be allowed. More competition is the right plan for Canada. Yeah, I don't have a problem with American or whoever telecom companies coming in, as long as none of them are given special treatment by the government, and there are as few barriers to entry into the sector as possible. Then I don't care who it is. Because if they are practicing predatory business practices, then okay, fine, I'll just buy somewhere else. The free market can speak for itself. We don't need the government to do it. End supply management, which forces us to pay twice the price for milk, cheese, eggs, chicken, and turkey. Andrew Scheer, you should be listening. Supply management is an outdated system that props up cartels at the expense of every single Canadian. Yes. It keeps prices artificially high by imposing exorbitant tariffs on imported goods, like a 300% tax on butter. Daily staples like milk, butter, eggs, and chicken are not luxury items and should not be priced that way. Eliminating supply management would save the average Canadian family more than $500 each and every year. Standing up to the cartels and protecting the pocketbooks of 35 million Canadians is the right plan. I would follow the Australian model with a gradual phase-out and compensation for farmers. Sure. I don't think that you should just take something that people have started to rely on away from them all overnight. It's the same as healthcare. It needs to be phased out. I have I don't want to call it a dream, but there's an ideal version of government that I've thought of. It's rather minimalist. I don't think that we can go to that tomorrow, because that would actually affect people's lives. However, we can make directionalist changes and slowly move to that. And this is the kind of thing that you do. A gradual phase out and compensation for farmers would not leave them out on their ass. If they don't want to work in an industry that's not regulated, they can sell their property, they can sell their means, and they can let someone else do it. that's completely fine. That would be within competition. Someone who can't make it sells off their stuff, and someone else who can make it buys it. Great. So, that would give them the time to do this, and it wouldn't just throw them out. But it would also reduce prices for us, the consumers, and it would make the lives of Canadians better, and it would basically reduce a hidden tax, is basically what things like supply management are. You tax every Canadian some $500 a year, apparently, and you give that to the people who are producing milk, eggs, cheese, butter, and chicken, and turkey. That's what that is. That's the effect of supply management. So, no wonder these people like to send lobbyists to Ottawa. Privatize Canadian Post and eliminate its monopoly on letter mail. Please do. Canada Post is awful. It cost me $30 to send a small package to Montreal so that I can liquidate my Magic cards, which are declining in value. We'll say it that way. They're not doing well. Canadians have long benefited from competition in the market for packages. What's more, letter mail volume decreases by 6% per year. With the skyrocketing cost of stamps and constant threats of labor action, there is simply no need to maintain Canada Post's monopoly on letter mail. We all know that monopolies have less incentive to reduce costs and improve services. Postal services should operate in a competitive environment just like any other sector of the economy. Of course, everything should. Why would any sector be exempt from that? Oh, well, the post is so important. The post is so important that we need to make sure it runs well. So we'll put it in the hands of the people who run something the least well. We'll get the government to do it because they really know what they're doing. Scrap the federal carbon tax. We already talked about that. Lower air travel costs by privatizing airports and opening the sector to more competition. Sure. Again, I don't see why this should be any different from any other sector. So privatize and allow competition. If theirs are currently government owned, then I don't think they should be. I can be very consistent on that. Sell government property and privatize it. It will work better. Canada has some of the highest air travel costs in the world. In cost competitiveness, we rank 124th. Wow. Many Canadians rarely or never fly because of the cost. I definitely don't fly as much as I would because of the cost. I drove to Vancouver a couple times. I drove to Seattle. That was actually a fun drive. But flying there would have been cheaper, for sure. But I did not. It is very expensive. It's cheaper to drive. Many others only fly from American airports because it's so much cheaper there. To tolerate this in a country as vast as Canada, where air travel is often a necessity, is unacceptable. Privatizing the airports and running them like businesses instead of government cash cows will help reduce costs. It will also It is also important to open the sector to more competition by lowering foreign ownership requirements and pursuing open skies agreements with other countries. These measures will help keep more money in the pockets of Canadian travelers. It's the right plan. It also incentivizes people to come visit Canada. If it's cheaper to come visit Canada because it's cheaper to fly there, then more people are going to fly here. There are plenty of places that are tourist destinations in Canada. Banff is wonderful. Niagara Falls. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to come to Canada for a visit. So making it cheaper for people to do so will just bring more people here. Abolish the capital gains tax. Everyone knows the more you tax something, the less of it you get. The capital gains tax is a tax on investment. When our economy is hardly growing at all, why would the government want to have less investment in the private sector? Abolishing the capital gains tax would make sure you never pay tax on any of your savings. It will give our entrepreneurs access to a larger pool of capital and will allow every single Canadian to invest more money and save more money. It is the right plan. The capital gains tax is just basically stopping you from investing as much as you want. Obviously, that's what it said, but all the money you invest, you get taxed on. All of the returns you get from investments. Cut federal tax to 15% on income between $15,000 and $100,000, and 25% tax rate on income above $100,000. I think that this is a temporary thing for him. I think that what he wants in the long run, I have no evidence of this, but what he wants in the long run is a flat tax, and that would be what I am in favor of. But having this basically two-tiered tax system, $15,000 to $100,000 at 15% and then 25% for everything above, that sounds much better than what we have right now. I mean, it's like a 36% tax, marginal tax rate on people making over $100,000 right now, and it keeps going up. I think at $250,000 it goes up again. So, you know, if you want your economy to grow and you want people to invest, having a lower personal income tax rate, well, having lower tax rates in general, is a great way to do so. It costs you money in that you don't get money, or the government doesn't get money to spend on stuff, but Max seems to want to not spend as much money, so if he's going to reduce taxes and balance the budget, spending's going to have to go. That's just all there is to it. I haven't seen anything about cutting spending yet, so this is what we're looking for. He needs to say something about this. I guess there's some stuff. Part of that would be selling all this the public property, but that doesn't really cut a lot of the government spending. That just basically does what Alberta does. They sold the electric companies to they kind of sold them into monopolies, which is an issue, but of course those can be whittled down over time, and they paid off all their debts. Okay, well, that's great. And then they posted a huge deficit because they didn't cut spending enough. So you need to cut spending as well. Canadians are paying too much tax. The Income Tax Act is a complicated mess that costs Canadians nearly $7 billion a year to comply with. Wow. Every Canadian deserves a tax cut. Simplifying the income tax by reducing taxes on all income above $15,000 and below $100,000 will mean that those earning in this range will save as much as $2,163 per year in taxes. If you're making between $15,000 and $100,000 a year, $2,000 is a big deal. Now, of course, the lower you are on that scale, the less you're going to save. But of course, the bigger deal less would be. If you're making $50,000 a year, then $1,000 off your taxes is also a big deal. If you're only making $20,000 a year, well, the $300 you're going to get back is great. You can buy food for your family. That's part of rent. You can put gas in your car. These are all relevant. So, yes. People at all income levels will feel this. Of course, the people at higher tax brackets are going to save more. That's how it works when you're cutting taxes. The people who pay more taxes have more to gain back. Okay. That's just how it works. That's how it has to work. Taxing income over $100,000 at 25% will keep more money in the pockets of Canadians. It is a tax cut for every single Canadian. This is the right plan. What he should be mentioning here is that cutting taxes for people who make over $100,000 a year will increase the amount of money that people who make less will get. The people who make over $100,000 a year are the ones investing. They're the ones who are creating jobs. They're creating wealth in the economy. If they are allowed to keep more of their money, they're more incentivized to invest it, and that will help more Canadians who are making less than $100,000 a year. So this is good for everyone. I think that's, something a lot of people don't really think about, and it makes them think, oh, well, it's just a tax cut for the rich. Well, yeah, a tax cut for the rich, but the tax cut for the rich can help other people too. It's not just the rich who benefit. Now, if all they did with their money was buy yachts and put swimming pools in their homes, okay, well, then I could see how that wouldn't be very good not that it wouldn't be very good, but that it wouldn't help the average Canadian. Other than the ones, of course, who get to build the pools and have a job because they are doing these things. No federal tax on the first $15,000 earned, giving everyone who earns that much an immediate $529 tax cut. That's a lot of money. If you earn $15,000 a year and you get $529, that's real money for you. Canadians are paying too much tax. The income tax is as complicated a mess that this is basically the same thing. Cutting taxes, it's good. Standing up for rural Canadians. Reduce grain commissions fee immediately. I don't know much about this. I don't want to read this. Alright, well, I'm just going to skip this one. Eliminate the farm-killing carbon tax. Let's see how this affects farmers specifically. Canadians all want clean air and water, but tractors don't run on solar power. Neither does your F-150 or Dodge Ram. Driving into town to take your kids to hockey practice should not be a luxury. The carbon tax proposed by Trudeau and Michelle Chung, will add at least 11 cents per liter of gas. That means an extra $10 every single time you gas up your truck. This type of tax grab is an attack on farms and the rural way of life. I will oppose it every step of the way, and as Prime Minister, I will repeal it. This is good liquor, by the way. The Canadian Constitution allows for free trade between provinces, but cartels like the Federation of Quebec oh, this is just syrup? Okay, well, this liquor that comes in basically the same bottle. I suppose it's probably just an old syrup bottle. It's like a dessert whiskey, basically. It's tasty as fuck. But cartels like the Federation of Quebec maple syrup producers block most Canadian products from being sold across the country. This is unacceptable. All barriers to international free trade must be removed. Stop the harassment of law-abiding gun owners. We kind of already went that. Spur agricultural growth through increased exports. Conservatives have always believed in expanded trade as the basis for prosperity. Ratifying the Trans-Pacific Partnership, expediting Canada-India free trade negotiations, and immediately and aggressively launching free trade negotiations with China will allow new export opportunities for Canada's high-quality agricultural products. Canadian pork farmers are at a massive disadvantage because they cannot export to China without having to vault over a tariff barrier. Australian pork farmers don't have that problem. Our farmers should have every opportunity to succeed. For those who don't know, China eats a lot of pork, like a lot. So not being able to sell your pork to China is a huge bad thing for you, huge negative for you. You want to be able to sell to one of the biggest markets in the world that loves pork, obviously. Yeah, a free trade agreement with China sounds great. As long as it goes both ways, then I'm completely fine with that, and in fact, I'm very for it. I would like free trade with basically every country on the earth. There are some I do not want it with, and that is mainly because of their governments. Places like Saudi Arabia are one of the only places I can actually see a tax being right. I don't know. It's still the same point. Is it fair? It's a question. But yeah, free trade sounds good. Oh, there's another thing too. There's what's called the Canadian Seed Act. Basically, it stops Canadian farmers from producing lower quality wheat. At this point, you have to produce, I think it's only the highest quality wheat that you can produce in Canada. But there's a huge market for medium and low quality grains that Canadians just can't tap into because of the Seed Act. So that would be another thing that I would suggest at least looking at, not necessarily doing away with. I don't know, maybe he disagrees, maybe there's another reason for it, but as far as I can see, it's basically a government program. The initial reason was to stop lower quality seeds coming in from the U.S., and okay, but like free market. I don't think that's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Limiting your farmers' ability to grow what they want is rather unfair, as far as I can tell. Extend accelerated capital cost allowance rates to agriculture. The accelerated capital cost allowance has allowed a certain business to write off investment against taxable income. Oh, sure. So this is basically tax credits for certain sectors that wasn't there before. Like I said, I would prefer you just reduce the taxes, but the federal farm tax from 15 to 10. I think this just is the same tax as the corporate income tax, and phase out supply management. We've talked about that. It's a good thing to get rid of. Canada's immigration policy must aim to fulfill our economic needs. Ooh. This is one I think he's probably going to get some flack on, but stay strong, my dude. Policy. Canada has... sorry, what was the title here? Focus on recruiting immigrants with specialized skills who will contribute to our economy. This is kind of what we do already. We already have a point-based system where it's easier to get into the country if you have certain skills that Canada is looking for, or if you speak English or French. So perhaps he's going to extend that, I'm not sure. Canada has always been a country largely open to immigration. Because of its vastness and its relative youth, I believe that by and large, our immigration policy has been very successful. This is true for the most part. I think in the last 5 years or so, basically since Trudeau took over, it's gotten much worse. It's also gotten much faster. You can see, even where I live, you just see the demographic shift, and it's going much faster than I expected it to. So, I'm also living in the West. It's more in the East, so I think that we've gone a little overboard here. However, immigration should not answer the needs of sectors where there is a scarcity of manpower with specialized skills, and in our more general terms, contribute to increasing the number of younger workers in a society that is fast aging. Oh, what a mouthful. Alright, let me try that one again. However, Immigration should answer the needs. Okay, I thought it said should not. Should answer the needs of sectors where there is a scarcity of manpower with specialized skills, and in more general terms, contribute to an increasing the number of younger workers in a society that is fast aging. I don't really care about the age of a society, to be honest. If we have more old people and we weren't saying that we're going to pay for them with the government, then it wouldn't matter. The problem we have is that we've said we're going to pay for people when they're old. Well, now we're in a situation where we don't have enough money to do that, and since the population is aging, we have this glut of people at the top who need money, and not enough people at the bottom who are paying taxes. If we were in a situation where people were expected to save for their own retirement, which is completely reasonable and completely doable, it's not that hard to save for your retirement if you do the right things, we wouldn't have a problem. It would be, okay, well, the population's aging, so what? Houses are going to get cheaper. Big whoop. That's not a big deal. But because we have to pay for them, it's a bad thing for us. So the short-term solution is we probably do need more. The long-term solution is to get rid of government benefits for elderly, or basically anyone. Expect people to save for themselves. But I don't know. Ask the average Canadian how they feel about that. Whether it's better for them or not, ask them how they feel about it. Canada's always been. Sorry. Yeah, I already read that. Skills management. It shouldn't be used as a social engineering program for ideological purposes. This is a very important line because it is basically the issue people have with immigration right now. For the most part, Canadians are completely fine with immigration, but replacement is a real thing. Crowding out is just a thing that exists. So, like I said, we need a more libertarian candidate who's willing to have a conversation about immigration. There wasn't anything in there about deporting all immigrants. There was, hey, we need to talk about this. And this is there is a way that it should not be used, in that social engineering, which I believe he's basically saying people from third world countries tend to vote left, which is true. So importing a bunch of people from these countries just to vote left so that we can continue running our economy is not a great idea. Preventing our businesses from hiring the immigrant manpower they need with red tape is a big government policy. Correct. At the other extreme, mass immigration that would create social tensions and is not in the interest of Canadians is also a big government policy. Correct. A government under my leadership would find an appropriate middle ground so as to unleash Canada's economic potential. I would reduce the number of immigrants from 300,000 a year under the Liberal government back to 250,000 a year, as it was on average under the Harper government. So it's not even that much of an increase. I'm not really sure why it seems like there has been then. Maybe the refugees aren't counted here? I'm not really sure. But, okay. Yeah, I mean, again, he's not saying let's get rid of it. Let's push it back a bit. Increase resources for CSIS, the RCMP, and the Canadian immigration officials to do background checks and interviews as necessary. To ensure our security, it would increase the resources of those organizations and Canadian immigrations and citizens to do the background check on all classes of immigrants, including more face-to-face interviews if deemed necessary. Okay. Immigration must not be used as a tool to forcibly change the cultural character and social fabric of Canada. Our immigration policy should not aim to forcibly change the we just read that change the cultural character and social fabric of Canada, as radical proponents of multiculturalism want. The vast majority of Canadians rightly expect immigrants to learn about our history and culture, master one of our official languages, and adopt widely shared Canadian values, such as equality of men and women, tolerance for diversity, and respect for Canadian law. Notice he says tolerance for diversity, not acceptance. There's a difference. Acceptance means that you are completely okay with something. Tolerance means that, well, you'll live with it. Tolerance can be mandated, acceptance cannot. You can never mandate someone to accept. Say there's a radical Christian who is very anti-gay marriage. You can make him tolerate gays, but you cannot make him accept them. Ever. It will never work. So, I like that he said tolerance. We need to switch our words from acceptance to tolerance, because that is what's important. To tolerate someone is good. To accept them is, well, I'd say it's neither good or bad. It's your choice. So I like that he switched there. And the vast majority of Canadians rightly expect immigrants to learn our history and culture, master one of our official languages, and and adopt widely shared Canadian values. Of course. If you're going to live here, you should live as a Canadian. If you don't want to live as a Canadian, live where you're currently living. If your values are more closely tied to Turkey, then you should stay there. Okay? Like, that's okay. But if you want to come to Canada and be free and breathe the fresh, clean air of freedom, then okay, sounds great. Come on over. This is the opinion held by basically everyone I know. It's not that people don't like immigrants, it's that people want them to assimilate to an extent. Now, I'm perfectly happy with someone coming over and bringing their food and, bits of their culture. Okay, great. I want the best bits. But for the most part, I want to keep Canada, Canada. That's okay. End reliance on the United Nations for refugee selection. Please, just end reliance on the UN. That's what I would prefer. How about, I wish this was just said leave the UN. That would be excellent, but I doubt that will happen. I would stop our reliance on the United Nations for refugee selection. Civil society groups that work on the ground have much better grasp of who could successfully integrate into Canada than a big international bureaucracy. We should rely instead on private sponsorship, including by faith-based organizations. Okay, the Liberals are strangling this to make room for poorly delivered state sponsorship. Yeah, state sponsorship is a huge mistake. The idea that the state has your best interests in mind is kind of a silly one. The state has its own best interests in mind. And as far as those interests are aligned, okay, fine, they'll do what is best for you. But if something is better for the state than you, then they won't do it. Canadian views on immigration are that we have too much. I'm not sure if it's over half. I've seen polls that there are more people who are against increasing immigration than for it. It's actually quite low now, people who are for it. So if that's true, then the government should be reflecting this. But that's not what Trudeau wants. That's not what the Liberals want. They want to increase it. So clearly, in this case, our interests are not the same as the states. So why would we ever trust them to pick the people who come here? That's so absurd to me. Stopping reliance on the UN and stopping reliance on the state for picking individuals who should come here seems great to me. My ideal would be a system where it doesn't matter, there's the free mobility of labor, but that would also have to involve some other things, like there basically being no welfare for people who immigrate here. Less regulations on basically everything that has to do with them. Minimum wage would probably just need to either go down a lot or just be abolished. One of the two. Immigration policy must fulfill our economic needs. My campaign is based on free markets and small government principles. I'm opposed to big government policies in all spheres of life. This is why I'd bring back the number from 300,000 to 250,000 as it was on average under the Harper government. I mean, $50,000 a year doesn't seem like much, but you gotta remember, Canada is about the size of California. So, it is actually a relevant number. Preventing our businesses from hiring the immigrants' manpower they need with red tape is a big government policy. At the other extreme, mass immigration would create social tensions, and it is not in the interest of Canadians. It is not in the interest of Canadians. It is also a big government policy. Whew. Whoever wrote this, I think, was strapped for time. A government under my leadership would find an appropriate middle ground so as to unleash Canada's economic potential. An immigration policy to fulfill Canada's economic... What? We just read this. Oh, I'm not reading all this. Okay. But I think we basically get the point. He's not anti-immigrant. He is for the conversation and, at least in the short term, wants to... I mean, not even really bring it back that much. 250,000 to 300,000 is like... It's a difference, for sure. Yeah, it's a difference. But it's not like a huge difference. You know, if you were cutting it by half, that would be a big difference, but he's not. He's cutting it by less than a quarter, so. Here we are in, where is this? A foreign policy focused on the security and prosperity of Canadians. Foreign policy must focus on the security and prosperity of Canadians, not leading dysfunction of the United Nations. I'm sensing a trend. I won't aim to please the Foreign Affairs Establishment and the United Nations, a dysfunctional organization which for years has disproportionately focused its activities on condemning Israel. Instead, we will ensure our country's foreign policy will be refocused on the security and prosperity of Canadians. The point about Israel is true. Basically, the biggest anti-Semitic organization in the world is the UN. That's what happens when a quarter of your nations are Muslim majority nations that hate Jews. I don't know what else to say about that. And you know they hate Jews because there aren't any living there. How many Jews are living in Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Afghanistan? Basically none. Sorry, I didn't read that one. Promote free trade policies, liberalize trade, and private property rights around the world. Countries such as China, India, Vietnam, and many others that are fast growing out of poverty did so because they got rid of their communist and socialist economic policies, while they loosened them. They didn't get rid of them. Certainly not in China or India. They still have some pretty terrible policies there. There's still plenty of people who are not able to trade their labor as they want to, but it's getting better. So, there is a direct link between the level of economic freedom and the level of development. They get richer because they adopted free market policies, liberalized trade, and private property rights, even if only imperfectly. My government will promote these ideas at every opportunity. This is what I want. I don't want Canada to get involved in foreign wars. I want Canada to get involved in foreign trade, and by that I mean not regulating it or forcing people to do anything, but by leading as an example. If we have as free trade as possible and we prosper, other countries will see this and realize that, oh yeah, okay, this works. This is how you get rich. And this is how Canada got rich in the first place. So, yeah, we just need to continue, or we need to go back to what we were before. A free trade economy that can lead by example. It's the same as the Nordic countries that have been struggling lately. When they were getting rich, it was because they had basically no corporate income tax, and if they had an income tax that was ever high, it was almost always on individual income tax, never corporate. And whenever they did try to increase corporate income tax, their economy fell short. So it's not that hard to see that a free trade and free markets are the best way to get rich. It's just people are not being shown that right now because, as far as I can tell, there's about, I don't know, like 4 or 5 countries that are even trying. My government will review the $5 billion that Canada spends every year on international assistance programs. Canada will do its part with humanitarian aid to fight global health crises and respond to emergencies such as major conflicts and natural disasters. But we will not send billions to other countries to boost their economies while many Canadians, including some First Nations communities, a lot of them, have levels of poverty comparable to third world countries. Instead of spending billions of dollars on other countries, we should use that money to cut taxes or help Canadians in need here in Canada. Yeah, again, lead by example. Not to mention the fact that just sending money to foreign governments has almost no effect. Of all the money sent to Kim Jong-un that actually goes to the people, I'd wager that it's less than 5%. It's probably less than 1%. What he does with money when someone sends it to him is he goes and buys a $20,000 pizza oven, and he pays to have professional chefs from all around the world flown to North Korea to cook for him. He pays to have rock stars come and perform for him. He pays for all of these things. A new big house, the Korean military is widely funded by foreign money. So, yeah, sending money to dictatorships or even just most third world countries that tend to be quite corrupt in their government does not work. The best thing we can do for them is to, as I said, lead by example, but also trade with them. Free stuff is not going to help them, and it will only ever keep them where they are. And it's the same with the First Nations, basically. We give them so much free stuff here. There's billions of dollars transferred to them every year. And has their situation improved because of it? Not really at all. It's just consistently been base level living. They have very little incentive to go out and work because if they do, they get less from the government. So there's cutbacks there. What are they called? I can't remember what they're called. There's a word for when you're working. Clawback. There we go. They have their money clawed back if they go out and work. So, we basically put them to in a situation where they can barely live off the government money, but they don't have skills to get a job that's more than the government money, so they sit there and live off the government money. What we should be doing is helping them get actual jobs. We should be weaning them off government money, and eventually, in a couple generations, they can be just like any other Canadian. but at this point it's very difficult for someone to do that. Now, of course, there are outliers. I shouldn't even say outliers, but there are those who do very well. I've met them, and every time I do, I'm very happy to meet them, and it's uplifting, really, because there are examples then for the other natives who think that they can't get anything done. Well, no, there are natives who do stuff. You just have to work for it instead of collect the free government stuff. What's this? Liberalize trade with as many countries and regions as possible. My foreign policy will be focused on liberalizing trade with as many countries and regions of the world as possible. This is not only the best way to ensure our prosperity, but it also helps other countries develop and get richer, and to ensure a more peaceful world. Like I said, lead by example and trade. If we want to help Africa, the best way to do it is to have a free economy ourselves and have as much free trade with them as possible. That is how they will become rich like us. Work with allies to defend Canada's security, especially against radical Islamic terrorism. Thank you for calling it out, what it is. You have to at least name your enemy before you can defeat them. I will continue to work closely with our allies to ensure peace and security, especially against radical Islamic terrorism. We will only get involved in foreign conflicts when we have a clear strategic interest in doing so, and when the security of Canadians is directly impacted. So no useless foreign wars. I would prefer to just not have foreign wars, but, I'll take what I can get. Not that Canada is a big warmongering nation anyway. Security and prosperity for Canadians. This is another long thing. If you want to read this, I think this might be this seems to be quite long. I don't think that we have time for that. This video is going pretty long already, so let's just get on to the last one here. A fair gun policy for Canada. Make firearms safety courses more widely available. These are actually really fun to take. Restricting the supply of firearms courses instructors is a backdoor way of trying to stop people from owning firearms. Safety courses should be widely available. I'll make sure that we have enough certified instructors to meet the demand. I gotta be honest, my school actually gave us not a lot of gun training, but hunting training, which was really fun. I actually enjoyed it, and it's knowledge worth having, certainly, to know the rules around hunting, and knowing how to shoot a gun, and knowing how to shoot a bow, and all this stuff, and how to properly string it. This is knowledge worth having. I'm not necessarily saying it should be taught in schools. It certainly shouldn't be mandated by the government that it should be, but it being an option was interesting for us. It was a nice Friday off once a month for that year. Double the length of firearm licenses from 5 years to 10 years. Make it easier to own them. Classify firearms based on function, not appearance. This makes sense. This type of rifle right here is not that dangerous. Of course, it is dangerous if you shoot someone with it. I'm not saying it's not deadly, but as far as a school shooting type weapon, this would be a terrible choice. The bolt-action rifle, you have to reload it every time, and it doesn't look like this one even has space for a clip there. So they would have to at least modify this gun to have even more than just the one bullet that's in the chamber. The one bullet that's in the chamber ready to fire. So to shoot this gun, he'd have to shoot, draw this back, put another bullet in, shoot, draw it back, put another bullet in. So yeah, but at the same time, this is a long rifle, so it looks scary. It looks like it could be used for a school shooting. Well, no. Firearms should be classified based on their function, not their appearance. I will use the simple overall length classification system as approved by members of the Conservative Party of Canada at our last. I will use the simple overall length classification system as approved. I don't understand. Function, not appearance. I'm not really sure what he's saying here. Repeal magazine size restrictions. Yeah, these are basically silly. The idea is that if you are shooting at a school or in a public place, the smaller your magazine, the less people you will be able to kill. Okay, so are you addressing the root problem there even? This has always been my point on gun restrictions. The root problem is not that guns exist. Guns have existed for a long time and people were not shooting each other very often. And in Canada, school shootings are still very rare. Or even public place shootings. So what is it about America specifically that makes it more of a hotbed for these types of shootings? Well, it's a problem not with the guns themselves, it's a problem with the culture. There's something very sick in American culture. I'm not going to go into what it is, not that I really have a clear picture of it. I have some ideas, but the problem is not the fact that people can have guns. The problem is something else that makes them, those individuals who own guns, more of an issue. I'll also say, one of the reasons they have an issue is because of their population density. Some areas have incredibly high, there's a lot of people living in those areas, especially compared to Canada, which is a very low population density, so you're going to have more of this stuff. It's going to look like more, but when you look at the size of Canada compared to the US, you understand that, wow, the reason we don't see a lot of this stuff is partially because we just don't have that many people. So let's go on. Magazine says restrictions are nonsense. Currently says restrictions do not contribute to public safety, and criminalizing firearm owners for something as simple as a flimsy rivet breaking. I'll put an end to magazine size restrictions. Reimburse gun owners from property loss resulting from previous government gun grabs and end future grabs. Gun rights are property rights. I will ensure that every Canadian is reimbursed for firearms. I gotta be honest, a lot of this here is him appealing to the rural crowd, which I think is wise. So in Canada, the rural areas vote almost exclusively Conservative. I don't even know one that went Liberal or NDP. I'd like that to stop. So by appealing to gun rights, you are definitely appealing to a specific set of Canadians. He's trying to steal votes from Conservatives. Not steal, but he's trying to win votes from Conservative areas. Where I am, most of the ridings are almost certainly going Conservative. Alberta's a very blue state, or province, excuse me. But if he can appeal to these people through gun rights, and you also had another section about farming, then maybe he can win some of those Conservative votes, and that would be a huge deal. The backbone of Conservative Party is basically the rural voter. Also places like Calgary, which are very Conservative. Again, even people there, though, are going to be drawn in by fewer gun regulations. Most of the people I know think that regulations on guns are pretty stupid. They're not going to shoot someone. I know plenty of people with guns, and I'm not worried about them shooting people. I've shot guns myself. I've owned a gun. So it's not like, it's not like your average citizen who owns a gun is going to be a huge issue. So by appealing to these people and getting them to vote for him instead of the Conservatives, he might be able to take some of their vote, which is probably the biggest place he's going to have to take stuff from. My guess here is he's basically saying, okay, well, the Conservatives are failures, and what we need is an actual Conservative Party. And from reading this platform, that definitely seems to be where he's going with this. So I suppose I am tentatively excited. I think that this could be very good for Canada. I also think that he could be a complete failure. We're not going to know until we see some debates, I guess. This is really when we're going to start having an idea. As for now, I would suggest that you come and read the platform yourself. There was some stuff that I skipped over, stuff that's probably relevant for you to know. If you're going to become a member or vote for them or not vote for them, vote for Conservative or Liberal or NDP. Other than that, thank you for watching. This was a long one, but I hope you learned something, and I hope it was interesting for you. Have a good one.